All right. Good afternoon. Can everyone let me know if you're able to hear me? You can just put it in the chat. Great. All right. Next question. Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I think everyone's camera's off, but if we have time at the end, I'll just open it up if you'd like to ask some questions, have additional conversation with me. I welcome that opportunity. So good afternoon. My name is Megan Hill Sundy. I am the grants manager here at Humanities Montana. And I'm very excited. We've got about 9 folks on this call today. And I'm excited, hopefully you're all interested and in our grant making, and that this presentation will kind of help you move towards submitting an application. So great. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I want to talk just a little bit about today's session. We're going to go into a little bit of detail about who we are. Then we're going to talk about the current grant opportunities available to everyone. A little bit about what we look for in from proposals. We'll talk about some keys to successful applications, and then if time allows, we will offer a session for Q&A. Okay, so we are we are the Montana's State Humanities Council. We were established in 1972. We're one of 56 councils across the nation, and we're funded through the National Endowment for the Humanities. We were created specifically to better infuse humanities directly and effectively into public life. For 50 years, we've helped strengthen communities through grants and special programs that reach into every corner of our state. We produce, fund, create, and support humanities-based projects and programs, eye-opening cultural experiences, and meaningful conversations. Our goal is to connect people, inspire ideas, and deepen mutual understanding. Our mission is to serve communities through stories and conversation. We offer experiences that nurture imagination and ideas by speaking to Montana's diverse history, literature, and philosophy. And to achieve our goal, we provide programs that tell our diverse stories. We facilitate conversations about the most pressing issues. We support Montana's cultural institutions through grants and partnerships. And we offer humanities such as history, literature, and philosophy to nurture memory, imagination, and ideas. We do have a strong commitment to IDEA, which is our inclusion, diversity, equity, and access for all people. And our IDEA statement is that we are embracing the intrinsic value of full humanity of all persons. Humanities Montana provides programs and experiences that nurture imagination and ideas through those diverse histories, literatures, cultures, and philosophies reflective of Montana's diverse communities. While attending to racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, ableism, and other systemic inequities, we make a particular commitment to Montana's Indigenous peoples, rural communities, and youth. And we're committed to providing and developing programs and grants for partners using this IDEA lens to support diverse representation among program leaders, project organizers, scholars, keynote speakers, conversation leaders, and panelists across sponsored events and offerings. So we are a pass-through entity for funds awarded to us through the National Endowment for the Humanities. And as such, we can provide sub-awards to organizations or groups that can apply for funding to carry out a project constituted for nonprofit purposes. Eligible entities include private nonprofit organizations, that's with that 501c3 designation, institutions of higher education, state, local, and federally recognized Indian tribal governments, institutions of the federal government, groups of persons that form an association to carry out a project. This kind of falls into our ad hoc category, and it would be really important if you do fall into that space to reach out to me before submitting an application. And we do offer sub-awards to individuals, but only through our research fellowship opportunities. And although it's not necessary that these organizations or groups be incorporated or have a tax-exempt status, all subrecipients must be formally registered with the government via sam.gov and be able to provide a unique entity ID to be considered eligible. And if we have questions about that at the end, I'm happy to assist. But we definitely cannot provide sub-awards to for-profit entities, specifically because we're redistributing federal award dollars. As a recipient of NEH funding, historically, Humanities Montana's annual sub-award budget is somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. And this year, we're very excited that our grant making budget is $150,000, so it's on the higher end of the compared to the last few years. We're really excited about that. And we have 3 granting cycles or deadlines and 1 ongoing application opportunity. So our fiscal year runs from November 1 through October 31st each year. And between that time, we accept applications for opportunity grants on a rolling submission basis, as long as funds are available. For December 20th is our next deadline, or our first deadline, and that is for research fellowships and regular grants. April 20th deadline is for regular grants only, and our August 20th deadline is specific to film and video, and again, regular grants. All applications are part of a competitive evaluation, and they'll be considered on the quality of the application submitted, its relevance to the humanities, and the potential outreach and value to all Montana citizens. A priority for sub-awards may be given to requests from entities considered marginalized due to community size, economics, ethnic, or cultural diversity. And lastly, all grants are reviewed by staff, a grants committee, and our board of directors make the final award decisions. For today, we're only going to focus on grants related to the April 20th, 2023 deadline. And a brief overview of our opportunity grants. So you can find guidelines that are more in depth. We'll give you all the information you need before submitting an application on our website. And all of our grant opportunities support projects that promote public humanities programming, and they must be rooted in the humanities. They must involve humanities scholars, engage the general public. They need to be free or not cost prohibitive. They need to be nonpartisan. Our opportunity grants offer support of up to $1,000 for projects in need of more immediate support and involve a less rigorous application and reporting process. Applications can be submitted at any time, but at least 4 weeks prior to the supported project. And we can only award opportunity grants to organizations, not individuals. Some examples of opportunity grants, some of the funding often goes to speaker honoraria, facility rental, equipment rental, outreach, marketing efforts, sometimes for program planning or personnel expenses, but we do hope that that's less than the programming side. An example in September, we had a request come in from the University of Montana, and it was about boarding schools, remembering our resiliency and shared knowledge. And this was a symposium that provided educators at the elementary, secondary, and post-secondary levels with knowledge, guidance, and practices related to integrating trauma-informed learning into their classrooms, institutions, and interactions with the community. The event also provided content-specific teaching methods designed to address and emphasize curricular integration of topics such as Indian boarding schools and other meaningful applications of Indian education for all. Our regular grants offer support in excess of $1,000 for projects requiring significant planning, implementation, and evaluation. Applications for regular grants can be submitted during each of our granting cycles and are tied to the following annual submission deadlines. Again, December 20th, April 20th, and August 20th. And we can only provide awards for opportunity grants and regular grants to, again, organizations and not individuals. Examples of regular grants are, it's a varied spectrum. So we've got speaker series, panels, lectures, presentations, cultural festivals, oral history projects, multimedia projects, literacy projects, and on and on. Definitely publications as well. Last year, an example would be we funded the James Welch Native American Literature Festival, and we supported bringing in authors and scholars from around the country to come in and participate in panels. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to try and examine the humanities and discuss the key components of fundable humanities projects. So many people are first introduced to the humanities through like a Humanities 101 course in college, humanities degrees such as English, history, philosophy. Some have heard about it as part of a humanities department or an institution. Others may understand the humanities from a humanist or a humanitarian lens. Maybe you just read a funny cartoon about the humanities and it spoke to you. So no matter the means by which you found yourself engaged with the humanities or participating in today's webinar, it is always worth diving a little deeper into how we, Humanities Montana, define humanities. So as an organization established to bring humanities to the general public, we are most interested in cultivating innovative and unique interpretations of the human experience. This is all forms of thought, interest, and expression. And we do this through stories and conversations that are important to Montanans and Montana communities. We work to bridge the humanities of academia with humanities-focused work in local communities. And we work to encourage community conversations supported by well-vetted facts and engage serious critical thinking. For us, the public humanities are a mode of inquiry and conversation that aims to engage, support, or challenge the ideas, beliefs, tensions, and prejudices of communities in which we live. We believe it's important thought that can happen outside of the academy, in neighborhood institutions, schools, and churches, at kitchen tables across the country. We are especially interested in instances of the public humanities that promote civic engagement. So in raising critical issues about everyday people and conducted with the hope of increasing participants' thirst for staying engaged. Rather than being defined by a rigid disciplinary boundary, it is the humanistic lens, which emphasizes curiosity, questioning, and dialogue that matters to us. Some of the key components of fundable projects include comprehensive humanities content, diverse and meaningful humanities scholarship, significance to Montanans, rich community engagement, quality program or project design, and strong project management and commitment to success. And every proposal is scored against a rubric or a set of criteria. And the first aspect is always eligibility and compliance. So 2 great tips I can give you today are, if you haven't already done so, you go to our website. There's a section for grants and grant resources. In that section, you'll see an eligibility survey. That is a great first step to determine whether or not your organization would be eligible to apply. There is also an FAQ section, which has a lot of information about our eligibility. It'll capture some of the content I'm going to go through in a moment, as well as allowable, unallowable expenses, deadlines, contracts, all of that is there. But after you've done the eligibility survey and reviewed the FAQs, the next step is to call me. And I'll do a consult with you. You can pitch your idea. We can talk about it. I can ask a bunch of questions if I see anything that might be questionable in terms of compliance or eligibility, and we can work through some of those different components to make sure that you're teed up for success before submitting an application. So these different criteria, one of the biggest, right, is humanities content. And above all else, as a humanities council, we were formed to create a bridge between humanities in an academic sense and community grassroots initiatives. And essentially, we're applying things like critical thinking, informed reasoning, logic, historical learning and analysis, and creativity to modern, current, pressing topics, issues, and institutions of the world today. And we look to Montanans to steward the humanities by developing projects that respond to current conversations about the conditions of civic and cultural life in real time, projects that further community-driven ideas and efforts to address issues of social, cultural, and intellectual importance, and projects that collaborate between humanities and non-humanities organizations to reach large and diverse public audiences. And when we think of applying the humanities, we're most interested in projects that result in some type of skill acquisition. And by skills, it could be critical thinking, creative problem solving, an analysis of available facts, observations, arguments to form judgment or rational or skeptical or unbiased evaluation of factual evidence. We look for a translation of humanities intellectual output to a broader community outside of academia. We look for skill acquisitions like increased understanding of the value of the applicability of humanities, increased understanding of ethical implications, skills like improved persuasive writing or oral presentation skills, just a general awareness, a greater awareness of understanding of current events, and an increased global awareness and sensitivity to other cultures. So when we say humanities content, we're looking for, how are you interpreting something that's relevant to us, like to that human experience? What new conversation are you starting, or what new angle are you coming at this frequently visited topic from? How are you starting a new conversation? To ensure that we're providing well-vetted humanities content through programs and grant making, it's important that we require all proposals to incorporate meaningful humanities scholarship. This means that we're looking to support projects that use the scholarship to inform your program design, planning, content creation, and/or your implementation. And scholarship is not isolated to individuals with terminal degrees in a humanities subject. but instead includes engagement of individuals with expertise or significant knowledge pertinent to the project's humanities content. This really comes into play because we are a nonpartisan and federally funded program. That means we can only provide funding in support of projects that bring multiple perspectives and offer critical treatment to interpret humanities content. And this is really critical if your project includes a highly politicized or controversial subject. The idea is that we want to see the humanities applied to this type of subject matter by bringing expertise and knowledge from multiple viewpoints and starting a new conversation that's based in fact rather than opinion. So a humanities scholar or advisor is an individual with significant knowledge and experience in a discipline relevant to a project's humanities content. And examples of humanities scholars include an academic scholar, so kind of that traditional scholar that we might think of, someone with the advanced degree, someone who, they might be a university professor, research fellow, they might have a PhD in a specific humanities topic or subject area. If they're involved in your project planning, presentation, content development, that's great. But it's not, like I said, it's not limited to that. We also look for subject area experts. So this could be someone who has an established expertise in an area specific to your project's content. Maybe they've gained this experience through their work, teaching, publications, or they're generally recognized by other experts in the same field as someone with significant understanding on this topic. This might be like a business or a nonprofit executive, a consultant, certified professional, published author, and on and on. The third category of an eligible scholar would be a community expert. So this could be anyone with a special knowledge of cultural traditions or local history, or someone who has very specialized skills or knowledge of the project's target audience. So, if you're working in an indigenous community, a tribal elder could be considered an expert, a local historian, an artisan, anyone of that nature. It just has that specific skill set needed to make sure your content is informed. And these experts need to be involved in some aspect of your project, planning or execution, or like I said, content development. And this is besides humanities content, this is the second most important criterion against which your application will be reviewed. So we really encourage, although letters of support are not required in our applications, we do encourage, if you have scholarship confirmed before your application, have them include a letter of support articulating why and how they're going to be involved in your project. So the next area that we look at is project significance. So in your proposal narrative, it's important to articulate why your project is important to advancing the humanities and provide evidence that you've done your due diligence to determine that your project is important to your target audience. So we need to understand how your project is responsive to a community need. You can share this in your narrative by describing how the project idea came to fruition. Are you addressing a known gap in knowledge or understanding? How did you determine that? Why is the project valued by your intended audience? You know they're interested in this work. Can your project staff or organization demonstrate a long history of working with or for the targeted audience or community? And do they have in your project staff or management, do you have the key knowledge and relationships with the community you're intending to serve that will ensure success? And then, is your project supported through other beneficial collaborations or partnerships? Does this work involve any sort of cross-organizational sharing of information, perspectives, or contributions? The next criteria is project quality. Every application form requires organizations to provide a project work plan. And the work plan is this narrative section where you can explain your overarching goal, your intended outcomes and outputs, and your activities. And we want to make sure that you can also align those activities with a specific timeline. And this is all in a written narrative. There's no set structure. It's just in your narrative, you'll want to hit on all of these points. And we also just ask that you describe your planned outreach efforts and your evaluation plans. Tell us how you will promote your program or project, include ways in which you'll recognize Humanities Montana, our support, if granted. And that's more so that we can let other humanities-focused organizations or groups that are doing a humanities-focused project know that we're out here and that we would like to fund their work. In terms of evaluation, we're looking for more than just like a post-program survey of participants. Tell us a little bit about how you're going to capture information about how did the implementation of the project go? What challenges do you anticipate? And if you are surveying or interviewing participants afterwards, tell us more about how you're going to use that information in the future. So the last piece, the last component is project feasibility. So we want to know, we want to check in and make sure that the overall management of the project is sufficient and sustainable. And who's going to be involved in the project, what qualifies them to do this work successfully. And it's also really important to include plans for addressing any changes in project personnel. How will you manage the project if the lead manager leaves the organization, or as I like to say, wins the lottery and disappears? We also look closely at your proposed budgets and cost share, so your expenses and your cost share. For regular grants, we require a one-to-one match, meaning if you request $4,000, you must include in your proposed budget the value of in-kind contributions and other cash income from other sources equaling $4,000. And we don't require a match for opportunity grants, but if you can include cost share, we greatly appreciate that because it helps us advocate to the NEH to say there's more happening in Montana, you should give us more money. So just a couple tips here. Successful application narratives. We want to make sure that your application organization information is correct. If you have applied for funding before and you're going in through our online portal, make sure that you don't already have an account, you're not creating a new organization. It helps us track how an organization's been funded or the previous applications that have been submitted. And we need to make sure that the name of the organization that would be receiving funding is tied to a specific tax ID and a UEI, and that this information is readily available in an updated Form W-9. And even though our online application requires you to write your narrative in a text field, we still ask that you use available features to format and organize your proposal. This means making sure to include indentation, punctuation, bullets, numbering, and separate paragraphs. And then you can also include reference links to complement your narrative where it makes sense to keep things brief. If you don't have to tell us the history of women's voting, of all time, right? You could just make it more specific. And if, like I said, if there's links to information on your website or elsewhere, please include those, and we will definitely go through and review those materials with your application. Oops. So we also want to know a little bit about your organization. Tell us about the mission. Again, explain the humanities focus of your project and clearly describe those goals, outcomes, outputs, timelines, activities. We don't ask for letters of support, but we do ask for a sponsoring organization letter. It's a certification that the leader of your organization is aware that you're submitting this proposal, that you're aware that we're funded through the National Endowment for the Humanities, and that you will adhere to the federal regulations associated with federal funding. And the application also includes different text areas. So make sure that you're reading through the application questions beforehand and not just throwing all of your narrative into one section, because it does help us when you break it out a little. So make sure that you're reading the questions in advance and that your narratives are specific to each question. And the key to success is balance, right? Try not to over-explain, like I mentioned, providing lengthy detail about a specific topic. Like I said, describing the history of feminism, but really just asking for funds to support honoraria for speakers on a panel. And just tell us why your project is important to Montanans right now and what you think the result of your program will be. And on the other side, try not to oversimplify by providing the bare minimum or providing just section headers with brief sentences. Tell us we're a humanities organization, so we love stories and we like to read. So please write quality narrative. And the main thing we want to know is tell us what you need, why you need it, what you'll do with the funds, and the intended immediate and long-term impacts of your public humanities project. Everyone's favorite topic, budgets. So you can find a list of allowable and unallowable expenses both in the grant guidelines and in our FAQs, and I'm always here if you have questions. But overall, allowable expenses are those things that are directly accountable to your proposed project activities and connected to the fulfillment of your project outcomes. So a few examples: personnel. So project staff salaries, we recommend that expenses in this category are maybe no more than 10% of the overall award. But in addition to staff salaries, you can request funds to support contractors, consultants, scholar expenses like panel participation, public presentations, research, expert services, anything to improve the quality of the humanities content that doesn't necessarily fall within that 10%. And project-related travel, per diem, lodging, meals, mileage for, again, all of those participating in your project. And if you are seeking funding for travel reimbursements, we will ask that you submit receipts for those pieces with your final report. And we want to also fund projects that are project activities that directly support the design, development, and implementation, and even your evaluation efforts. So this might be promotion, publication for printing, or advertising through news outlets or social media. We can provide support for rental of facilities and equipment, such as meeting space, audiovisual equipment, etc. But the challenge, one thing we can't do is fund purchase of equipment, anything like a capital purchase, anything that would depreciate over time. And Essentially, our award funds cannot be used for anything non-project related, or anything that kind of falls under these categories. So direct costs not directly accountable to your project activities, indirect project related expenses over 10% of the overall funding request or award amounts, non-public meetings of organizations. We may grant approval for programs that are open to the public but held in conjunction with the group's meeting. Construction or restoration of buildings, exhibits, and other similar general operating expenses. Capital purchases, sort of those fixed and tangible assets such as real estate, equipment, vehicles. As I mentioned, anything that has value that will depreciate over time. One item that comes up frequently is books, art collections, exhibits. Any museum or library acquisitions are unallowable expenses. So make sure, if you aren't sure if your project would include an eligible expense there, please give me a call and we can talk through it. We also have the challenge of distinguishing between art and the humanities. So we have the Montana Arts Council, and then we have Humanities Montana. And the best way to explain this is to say that we can't fund the direct creation of art that also includes performances. However, if you have a performance or an exhibit and you're offering a public discussion afterwards, we can support the public discussion. So the best way to think about this is that if you are an arts-based organization and your project does involve artists, performers, anything like that, what we can fund is the interpretation and the public engagement with that content. So there's a fine line that we have to walk between art and humanities. And again, if you have questions, I am here to help walk you through some of those ideas. We occasionally offer grants in modest amounts for performances, but they have to be teamed with interpretations that might be a lecture or a scholar-led discussion. Again, it's a fine line, so please let me know if you have questions about that. We also cannot fund any lobbying or direct social action or anything that advocates for a particular course of action. And we can't fund anything that appears to be a one-sided, uncritical treatment of an issue, or projects that would raise money for other groups. So if you have a fundraiser and you're hosting a lecture, that's something you probably want to talk to me about before applying, because we very infrequently provide funds for fundraisers. It's just kind of outside of what we can do. Can't fund meals or refreshments for an audience. Definitely no alcoholic beverages or entertainment costs, and we cannot support any candidates running for political office. So successful budgets clearly depict the exact funds needed to support the specific activities outlined in the narrative. They include support for only allowable expenses, and they accurately account for and include an appropriate cost share. Remember that the line items and amounts you propose are the same we will ask you to report on. And final reports will include sort of the side-by-side comparison of your approved expenses and your actual expenses by line item. If you need to revise your budget for any reason, or revise your project goals or outcomes or activities, that's something we'd want you to reach out to us after you're awarded, and we can make some amendments or modifications to your project. So cost share, just to dive into this a little bit more. I'll just give you a quick example if you're unfamiliar with how the cost share works. But this example, imagine you're facilitating a discussion panel at a local library and your organization needs funding to help one of your panelists travel from somewhere else in Montana. So you make a request to us for $100, and that is, we would provide $100 to you specific to your speaker's travel expenses. But there are two categories you can include in your cost share. So in kind, so that could be your speaker donates an hour of their time to present at the event, and they usually charge $50 an hour. So essentially their in-kind donation for this project is $50. If your organization pays $50 to advertise the event using paid social media ads, that would be cash contributions from your organization to the project. So your total project budget would be $200, $100 from us, and $100 from cost share. So what's next? The best projects are those with the most well-formulated plans. Prepare by reading the grant guidelines, which you can find on our website, which is humanitiesmontana.org. Brainstorm your project and determine what goals you want to accomplish and how your project is rooted in the humanities. You contact me to determine if your project is a good fit and request a pre-review of your application. I will accept drafts to review up to 2 weeks prior to the deadline. So if you're working with me, you can call me and say, hey, I put some content in my online application draft. Can you take a look at it and give me some feedback? I'm happy to do that. And make sure you meet our deadline. That is, the next upcoming deadline is April 20th for regular grants. For opportunity grants, it's a rolling submission deadline, so feel free to call and submit that whenever. And make sure that you've got an account in our online application system, and you can access this through our website. You can go to the individual regular grants page or the opportunity grants page, and there's a couple different ways to access it there. And then make sure that you read through the application questions. Please do that before you start. And then when you start drafting your application, make sure you have also collected all of the required supporting documentation that we ask for. And then you can finalize your application and submit. So that's, I think April 20th falls on a Sunday maybe. So I think you'll have until midnight that day to submit your application. All right, so I am going to open it up for questions. If anyone has any, you can feel free to unmute yourself or pop something in the, someone asked if my contact information is on the website. Yes, and it is also right here, if you can see that. So it's Megan.Sunday. That's Sunday without the A. So Sunday at humanitiesmontana.org. And my phone number is 406-243-6067. I'm happy to, does anyone have any other questions? Do you need examples of other funded projects? Julie, what I'm going to do, instead of sending slides, I'm going to post a recorded version of this session on the website. So again, that will be on humanitiesmontana.org under the grants resources section. Great, Beth, I'm glad this was helpful. Any other questions? No. Okay, well, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to participate in this session today. It's really just the basics of what we do and what we hope our grant making can offer for you. Again, I can't stress enough to give me a call, pitch your idea, and we'll talk through it. We want to fund humanities focused work. And I think everybody deserves to be heard, and all ideas are welcome. So thanks so much. I hope everyone has a great day.